Jamie Edmonson, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me. It's cool. Cool little setup you've got in the van, and it's cool to be here.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, it's the first time we've done a podcast in the new podcast van, so you're the first one. Hopefully it goes seamlessly.
Yeah. It seems like you know what you're doing, so we can only hope.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, how are you getting on? How's the off-season been going?
Yeah, good. Feels like I've been busy, just a bit of a mix of everything, riding as much as I can at the moment and in the gym a lot, so it's good productive off-season time, really.
Do you actually take deliberate amount of time off in the off-season, or do you just basically just keep going and carry on riding?
So I think the last race of the year last year was just the first weekend of October, and then from the rest of October I didn't even touch a bike, just literally put it in the garage dirty, and that was me after the last race. And then sort of 1st of November just straight back into it, and felt like I picked it up back to where we were pretty quickly. So, but it was nice to take like a full refresh on.
I guess you're basically merging your hobby and one of your favourite pastimes, or your favourite pastime, with a job. I know I sort of struggle with the separation a bit. How crucial do you think it is to get that balance?
Yeah, I think it's hard to not just want to ride your bike all the time, but I'm almost in a position now where I've got like enough different bikes that I can actually go ride pump track for fun and then do a full road interval session and then go ride enduro the next day, and sort of keeping it varied enough that it doesn't feel like I'm riding the same bike every day over and over. It's like keeping the variety, I think, is the key for me.
What's a typical off-season day of the week look like for you?
So like 3-4 gym sessions a week, and they're kind of a mix of strength and conditioning stuff with a lot of like core exercises and upper body stuff just to help us for when we're crashing and keep us strong and mobile. And then kind of 3 or 4 rides a week as well. So sometimes it's just go out and ride for 2 hours and enjoy it, and sometimes it's real structured and intervals and try not to throw up and that kind of stuff. So it's mixed. There isn't sort of one typical day, which I think I really like. I couldn't cope with doing the same thing.
Keep it varied. That's interesting you say. So like, does a lot of your gym work, is that basically like injury prevention, essentially, just to make yourself strong when you crash?
Yeah, a lot of it is. A lot of it, seems like there's not masses to be gained. There is obviously something to be gained by being fit in the races, and you need to be like a benchmark level of fitness that everyone's kind of at now. But in terms of like winning a race based on pure fitness, it's pretty hard to do, especially in the downhill stuff. It's so much based on skill and experience that just being able to hold yourself together for a weekend, or like we had that 6 days in a row in snowshoe, and there was definitely people struggling just because you had a crash on day 2 and couldn't hold it together for the rest of the week. So a lot of injury prevention type stuff for sure.
It's such a fine line between pushing hard, keeping fit, keeping sharp on the bike, as well as basically just not getting injured whilst you're training, as well as during the season.
No, for sure. It's that kind of fine line of I need to ride my bike as fast as I can, as often as I can, without getting injured. It's like, I think you never quite know if you're riding hard enough until it all goes wrong. But no, it seems that everyone's sort of figuring it out more and more each year. Yeah, and getting stronger and more sensible, so it seems to be good.
Don't envy you guys. We've got it pretty chill, just cutting around on the trials bikes, shooting Instagram clips, not having to compete. Definitely take it for granted sometimes. So have you got do you have a trainer that you work with day to day?
Yeah, so I work with Chris Kilmurray.
Okay, cool.
So he's sending me programs, and we're sort of in touch all through the week, and I've been with him this will be my 8th season with him now, so a long time. Yeah. And we just get on real good, and I ride with him quite a bit in the summer, and it's nice to have a coach that rides as well, so they can really understand that like you do a full day downhill, you don't want to do gym in the evening. Yeah, okay. But at the same time, if you're only riding for an hour, then go blow yourself up in the gym that night and you'll be good to go the next day.
How important is it to have someone like Chris in your corner, keeping you right and supporting you in probably many ways, is he?
Yeah, no, I think it's good, and he's as much of a sort of physical coach as it is just life advice, medal prep. It's a bit of everything really, and I think sometimes you don't necessarily need a coach, but just to have someone to tell you you're either doing the right thing and keep it up, or what are you doing, pull yourself together and get on with it. Like, it's having someone to say it how it is to you is so important for the races, because sometimes it feels a bit like you're with a team, but all of them are being too friendly to you. It's like someone just needs to tell me I need to pull it together and go all out for this one race or whatever.
Sounds like something I could probably do with them, to be honest. It's funny that, like, just because we don't compete, you never really, just immediately don't ever think of, like, having something like a coach or anything like that, but it'd probably actually be pretty beneficial.
No, for sure. And I think it's nice to have someone to work with that's kind of, you're all on the same page and kind of having something to keep you, what's the word? Like, if you're slipping up, they know you're slipping up, and to keep you current, really.
Do you work with anyone for, like, the mental aspect of the whole thing? Because there's obviously, like, downhills, whilst it's such a physical sport, it looks gnarly, it is gnarly. Definitely one of the things that I've taken from speaking to some of the downhillers, like yourself, Reese, Greg, Tanny, mental aspects, everything. I think people are getting more and more in tune with that. Is that something you, like, consciously work on, or do you just kind of let that take care of itself?
Yeah, definitely consciously working on it. I think I don't have anyone that I work with at the moment. I think it's certainly something I'd be interested at looking into for sure. But looking back at the races this year, like, the result in the downhill especially, the results were kind of varied, and a lot of that was the mental game. I didn't get fitter or less fit or more or less bike time through the year, really. It was just a case of where is my head at that weekend, how much did I want to commit to that run, and then we see where it ends up, and it's like, yeah, that all makes sense.
You see it happen time and time again where you have, like, a rider who's just thereabouts, maybe in, like, top 10 or top 15, and it just takes that little boost of confidence or something, whether it's maybe a little bit of luck or something just goes right for them. And it's just insane how that sort of click happens, and it just seems to set them on their way. Like, you see it with, like, Josh Bryceland, like, way back in, I don't know when that was, like 2014 or something. Danny Hart did it again in, like, 2016, and it was in, like you say, they're not getting any faster, they're not getting any more bike time, but something just changes, and it's pretty insane just to see the power of that just immediately translate into results.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think once you sort of start to see that you're doing the right thing, and you just need to do, like, knowing, certainly for me, knowing that I was going well enough, but only when I'm at 100% run, like race speed, then even just knowing that is such a beneficial thing to think, actually, if I put down my best run possible, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Actually, that'll put me in a result, or at least a time gap where I'm like, I'm stoked on this. And I think once you know that, and you're not thinking, oh, I don't know if I'll be happy or not with this race because I don't know how I'll go, even on my best day.
Yeah.
Once you know that even at your best, you're happy, then it's more a case of making sure that's happening, as opposed to sort of saying, well, if I put down the run of my life, I'm still going to be disappointed because I'm going to be whatever X position. I think that's a big thing. Yeah,
it's an interesting way to look at it, because I suppose downhill there is plenty of other sports like it in the nature of it, in that, like, it's essentially a time trial, isn't it? You're by yourself, like, it's you versus the track. The results are made afterwards, really, aren't they, in terms of, like, where everyone is? So, like, is that just a constant battle of you just trying to, like, keep it between yourself and the track, as opposed to getting too wrapped up in, like, what everybody else is doing, basically?
Yeah, I think there's so many variables in something like downhill where the race the elite men's race is an hour and a half from the first rider to the last rider. The amount of, like, weather changes, track changes, all the conditions, all the people. You have 59 guys in a World Cup get a puncture, and you've suddenly just won by a massive margin.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what's going to happen. So I think getting to the point of just focusing on yourself has been real key, I think, and just taking it as it comes. And I'm now at the place where if I'm happy with my run, then I'm generally happy with the result. It's kind of they're tying up nicely, and it's just a case of getting me sorted and sort of letting the results come to.
Yeah, like, you're fast enough that basically if you lay it down, you're gonna be up there or thereabouts, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Try not to, like, look back on things too much, but it's hard not to. With the 2020 season that you had, it was so mental for so many different reasons. Most notably COVID. What was it? It was essentially like world champs and then 2 double headers.
Yeah, that was it.
It seems that you've been around for ages, and I'm like, how are you 21 now?
20. I'll be 21
You're 20.
in March. Yeah.
That's insane. Like, you seem like you've been around for so long, and you're still only 20. You're like, just don't get old. So what? You're 18 and 2020, first year in elite.
Yeah.
Did you come into that season, like, with many expectations, or was it just a case of seeing how it goes?
kind of seeing how it goes. I had no idea. I did 4 seasons with the race team. That ended, and then going into 2020, I was on my own program. So I was on a bike that I was happy with, but didn't really know where that put me based on everyone else's time. So I was kind of just going as hard as I could, and thought that was the one. Had 1 year as a privateer to kind of try and make a mark, and that would either be it, or I'd keep on racing for as long as I could.
Yeah,
it kind of came down to that. And then that first race, even before Loser, I think I didn't know whether I was going to qualify, and it started raining for everyone, and I dropped in. I think I was 18th in qualifying, and I was like, okay, we're where we need to be. And just from there, like you said, the confidence kind of spiraled, and it came back to that thing of, if you put your best run down, actually the results will tie up on the right day, and ended up having some good results that season.
It's so cutthroat in that the sort of minimal amount of races in the season, which is obviously made even worse by the fact that COVID, there was 4 World Cups.
Yeah.
In some ways, people might look at it from the outside looking in and be like, oh, those guys got to chill, like they only have to race 4 races. But like, you suddenly have like an 18-year-old like yourself, and like you just said there, it's basically like your career almost depends on 4 like 2.5 minute runs.
And that's kind of why I'd always tried to keep on the enduro side of things as well, just to have more chances that if you had 1 good race a year, actually that'll set you up for the next year. But the more chances you can have to have that 1 good race, the better, really, in my eyes. I can see why we don't have 18 rounds like Formula 1 or Supercross or whatever, but in a sense it would be nice to have more chances, for sure. I don't think it would take away from the individual wins or good results, but it would definitely give more people a chance to show their potential, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting when you make that comparison to Formula 1, which is, what are they on, like 20, 22 races or something like that?
It must be something like that. It's mad.
I guess you'd have the downside of basically trying to stay healthy for that many races, but it's just getting that balance, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it would definitely change the intensity of it. At the moment, downhill feels like it's getting to a place where it's very intense and very fast, and the margins are getting so small, and everyone's on such like a fine-tooth edge of having big crashes and doing well in races, that it's almost a few more rounds potentially would take a bit of that intensity away, and might be better. But it just changes it all, for sure.
Yeah, I guess there's pros and cons for both. Yeah, I know you've only been racing for a few years, you're obviously still young, but do you think, from what you've observed beforehand and now racing, do you think there is that level of like looseness in the World Cup now that maybe wasn't there like 7 or 8 years ago?
I think there is, yeah. I think there's definitely, and partly the way the tracks are going, they're getting faster, and the bikes are at such a stage now where they can handle a lot. So the track builders are putting us through a lot, and there's sketchy jumps, and then there's whatever else that's happening, and sometimes they're not necessarily built to the safest of standards, and there's bits that we would like change that can't be changed, because you turn up at a race and there's a jump that's 4 meters too small, and they're like, well, you just got to race it. It's the same for everyone, and stuff like that, where it's certainly getting loose and dangerous, but it keeps it exciting, and we still love it. I think that's the thing.
Is there like a setup? Because like we talk about Formula 1 again, try not to make too many comparisons to Formula 1, but one thing I saw in Formula 1 is they like have like a drivers meeting. After they've after they walk the track or after they've raced the track, and they basically like relay concerns about like safety and stuff like that. Does that exist in downhill?
Yeah, so there's a technical delegate guy, and he's sort of in charge of the track, and then the relationship between the riders and the UCI, and then there is a bit of a riders group that has some of the big guys in it, and they all sort of feed back to what they think needs changed or what they're not liking or happy with, and there is a bit, but I think it still could be more potentially, and get a wider spectrum of people involved. But
I can't even remember which race it was. There was like that like off camber grass bank that people were like so loose down, and then it went straight into like a sort of slatted jump or like crossing, especially if I don't have to do it. Like I'm loving from like as a punter, like
for sure.
I love the intensity, but that almost felt kind of like pointless, and that it wasn't really adding anything. And I was literally watching that and struggling to watch it, just being like, you just waiting for someone to like wipe out just before they go onto like that sort of slatted wooden thing, and it was like so scary to watch. And I was looking at it, I was like, kind of would have thought of that would have been thought about in not having to put like the riders through like unnecessary risk.
No, I remember it was in Leger, I think. So it was the race that rained as well for the finals.
Yeah,
made it extra gnarly. But it was that was one of those sections that you walked in track walk and thought, this is sketchy. This is like on the limit, and we're not really gaining much. Spectators on the outside aren't going to think this is cool till someone gets really loose.
Yeah.
But it's terrifying us as we're coming down.
Mm-hmm.
And not to trash talk the French, because I've never built a World Cup track, but they definitely had some weird shaped jumps in that course that definitely we were asking questions about points, because it was, and it's hard because you want jumps in a World Cup track that you can hit at 100% speed, but how do you then practice them without being at 100%? Like having jumps of the right size is one of the hardest things, and every track seems to go one way or the other, and it's either you spend all Friday casing the jump in practice because you have to come in at max sprint and full tuck and like pull up on it in your race run, or actually you get to race runs and you're like, I'm landing so flat on this, it's not even a landing anymore. So it's hard. It is hard for sure, and they're doing the best they can, but it's a weird mix.
That is a tough job. I suppose you just have like so many different riders, in different categories, and you essentially have to make one track.
Yeah, when you look at the range of riders that are at a World Cup now, everyone's good, but you compare the fastest junior woman to the fastest elite man, and there is a gap, and trying to make a track that works for everyone is always going to be hard, I think.
Yeah, so we're talking about Portugal 2020, which is your best World Cup result. How did that whole day go and stuff like that? Were you just like, were you feeling confident at the top, or was it was another one of those ones where you're just taking it as it comes and see what happens?
So it was a bit weird because it was the double header, and I think I went 10th in the one before, which was
of course,
complete surprise. I was like, I didn't think I'd get that. So I'd cruised through the next qualifying to I was like, if I got 10th at the last one, I could and I had like maybe a little bit more room to go better than 10th. I thought, I was like, well, I'll just cruise through qualifying and get in, because I don't want to miss out and then not get to even have a chance at it. So then just kind of did that, qualified mid-pack, felt good, and I really enjoy that track. It was I think I seem to do better on tracks that I enjoy. Once I start puzzling a bit too hard over stuff, it seems to set me back a little bit. So that definitely helped, and I just went all out everywhere I could. I pushed as hard as I could, and I remember being on that sprint, and it's like a sprint that comes down the hill and then like levels out with a tarmac road.
Oh yeah.
And Ben Cathro was on his e-bike, like sprinting next to me, shouting at me. And I was like, I got to the point, I was like, my legs are about to collapse here. And I was like, but actually I got nothing else on today. Yeah, and you just have to just empty your tanks. And
and that like little drag races like brutal, like.
And then so did that, and it was just a good run, and then it came down, it just kind of sat there, and it started to drizzle a little bit, and a little bit of rain came, and kind of sitting on the hot seat just waiting for someone to come down and take me out, and it just kind of didn't happen till the end. And I got to the last like 10 guys, and I'm like, well, this is sick, but I don't want to win it, because if I win it now, everyone's going to be like, oh, I just raced.
So did you come down like 30th or something like that? So there's about 30 riders still to go. You go straight into the hot seat, at least a few seconds up on someone else, were you not?
I think it was maybe like a second up on Phil Atwell, who ended up coming, I think he was 5th in the end, so we both went pretty much to the end. But
like I said, it's interesting saying that you almost like didn't want to win. I was almost I think maybe by the time it got to like 6 or 7 riders left, I was like, Jamie's won this, like, for sure. I was like so sure. Were you beginning to think that, or were you fairly confident that like one of the big dogs would be able to beat it?
I think everyone was getting close, so I knew it wasn't like I wasn't winning. Like people weren't coming down and being 10 seconds back; they were just 1 or 2. So it was. I knew it was tight, and my time had been pretty much the same as Bruni's qualifying time. So I knew it was like, if he could do what he did in qualifying, it was going to be super tight. And then, but I just didn't know, and it was so hard. I was so surprised to make it that far that I was like, I don't know what's going to happen here. Just take it as it comes, but I don't want to win it based on just the rain. Don't want to win the first one like that for sure.
No, that's interesting to hear. Like, I guess it kind of shows your personality. Like, some people will be just like happy to take it, but maybe it kind of indicates the fact that you're like here to stay and you don't plan on just winning one.
I hope so. Yeah, I think it was, and it definitely made up for two years of junior where I think I was the highest ranked junior for 2 years in a row who didn't podium.
Oh, really?
That was my claim to fame, and it was like after that, it was like, oh, okay, we're back where we want to be.
So did you never have a podium as a junior?
No, so I had like
That's pretty wild then.
like 3 fourths and a couple fifths.
Yeah.
So did okay, but just never quite managed to like line it all up to when I had my best day. The best guys had their best day, and when I had my worst day, someone else would win, and it would be like, oh, that could have been me if I'd had a good day, but it just never lined up.
I guess it makes sense. There's just so many variables, but it's interesting that like consistent success as junior doesn't guarantee success in elites, and vice versa. Like someone like yourself, not done as well as you'd maybe had hoped in junior, and then you come into elite and something just kind of clicks and you make it happen. But I guess it's just important not to get too disheartened by it and just keep sort of plugging at it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think junior's in a weird age where everyone's kind of growing and learning, and some people have been racing for years and on like a steady build, and some people are fresh in and actually they've done 1 year downhill coming off a different sport, and now they're in and they're suddenly doing well or whatever. There is just so many more variables. By the time you get to elite, it kind of levels out a bit, and everyone forgets once you're in second year elite how long you've been there for almost. Yeah. It's like nobody's saying, oh, you're third year elite, so
yeah,
it's way more impressive than Greg Bernard, who's done 20 seasons or whatever. But by elite, everyone's kind of level, and it's just like, right, go ride your bike.
You get 1 year basically like a little bit of like kind of consideration, then it's like after that you're just in with the big dogs.
Exactly, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it was cool to watch, even though you obviously didn't get the win. To get a podium, by the sounds of it, maybe sounds like it was the perfect setup for you rather than taking the win. Off the back of those results, was it a case of batting away all the offers and picking which one, or was there very much like one on the table?
So coming into that last loser race, I'd sent off a bunch of emails to people and sort of not heard back from anything, thinking I was trying to like, because all the managers are at the last World Cup and then I won't see them again until March or whatever. So it was kind of, before the race, I'd emailed a lot of managers and a lot of sponsors and been like, is there anything we could do for next year? I never really heard back. So then straight after the race, a few got back to me, and then a few more, and it just sort of, there was some real good offers, and there was some offers that were like, maybe. And actually my existing like privateer sponsors all sort of came forwards and were like, if we see you should be on a team, and we fully support that. But if you want to do privateer thing again, we'll give you a lot more support. So that was definitely something I had to weigh up as well. And it was kind of hard because there was a few sponsors who were like, well, what do you think? How much do you expect to be paid? What do you think you're worth? And it was like, I have no idea. And I had to sort of start. It's such a untalked about thing that it's like, well, I don't want to ask for too much and then they be disappointed, but I don't want to like undersell myself. And it was kind of a weird situation to be in, and ended up getting a real good offer from SRAM and kind of went with them, I think.
So random. There's no like sort of structure in place. There's nowhere you can look online to see how much other people get paid. Like if you're a teacher, you get whatever. It's funny that when you're just like, you write a number on a bit of paper and you're like, oh, that's like the last thing you want to do is, like you say, you don't want to undersell yourself, but if someone like a rad team who you do want to sign with, you don't want to be like, oh, I want X 100,000. You'd be like, nah, see you later.
Yeah, no, and it was exactly it. It was a funny situation. One of the people I was speaking to, they're like, how much do you think you're worth? How much would you expect to be paid? And I was like, kind of just pulling a number out of the air at that point. I was like, 15,000, like 15,000. And he goes, 50,000, 50, 60. Well, we could definitely look at that. And I'm like, whoa, no. But the fact that they didn't even like bat an eyelid at that made me think, well, maybe that's what I should have asked for. I don't know it. I'm just so clueless. And
I suppose by saying a high amount, that's like almost an indicator of value, whether it's right or wrong. When you're basically dealing with those offers and try to pick the program that's best for you, how much is the bike, the sort of the setup, the team managers, the aspirations of those team managers and everyone involved, how much is that factored in to the obvious ones such as money?
That was pretty much the main thing for me. I think it was, the money was nice and it was like, see if I can get enough to survive on, but I need to be on a setup that I'm happy with. I don't want to be on any sponsors that I wouldn't pick if I had the choice, and to be with someone who'll give you the full support is worth so much more than the money, because you have a massive salary for 1-2 seasons, but you've done it on a bike that doesn't work for you and your style, and you're not getting anything the next year. And you're ending yourself there. Whereas if you can actually take a bit less and go with a setup that really works for you, then it's endless, really, the possibilities.
What's this team called? Is it RockShox Trek?
RockShox Trek race
team. Pretty young team, really, isn't it? Or it must be like the youngest team.
Yeah.
Like going. Was their outlook very much more of sort of, I'm sure they care about results, but a bit more like development focused rather than like we want immediate returns on this?
Yeah, exactly. Like the second one, really, it was kind of, they're seeing us, we're there to grow and develop, and they're there to help us do it in the best way that they can. And that was definitely a big thing, that although she ended up winning the series, and she was going to be the main rider, it was kind of like there's not one main elite that you're elite male that you're going to compete against all year, and we'll pit you two against each other. It was like, actually, it's kind of, I can do my own thing and have my opinions heard, and that definitely helps, I think. Is
that a bit of a blessing and a curse sometimes, not having another elite male on the team with you, or is it?
Yeah, for sure. It would. I'd love to have a teammate that I could sit on the back wheel of and race each other all winter, and that I can definitely see the value in that. But at the same time, if you two suddenly have very different opinions on bike setup, for example, and you're asking for the opposite thing, you start clashing against each other, and actually it doesn't help. Yeah. So that it's kind of finding that fine line and the balance. It's definitely hard.
Again, Formula One, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's like your biggest rival is your teammate. Not maybe so much in downhill, but I guess you just compare yourself to similar people on similar setups to see where you're at, I suppose.
No, for sure.
Valley Hall's your teammate. How, even though she's obviously in a different category, how inspiring is it to see her? It's hard to say she had a mixed season. She's World Cup winner, but she had a difficult season. It was definitely like up and down. But seeing her success must be pretty inspiring at the same time.
Yeah, it's cool, and we're the same age, so I'd known her since junior, but never really like spoken much, and then getting to ride together and train together last winter, it was cool to see someone my age who'd done so much already and was just so professional and so like switched on to what she needed to be doing, and having a plan, and sort of being like seeing her having the confidence in what she was doing as the right thing was real inspiring, I think, and that sort of helped me be like, right, I need to get on her level, even if we're in complete different categories. Actually, I need to get my training as dialed as she's got it. I need to get my diet together. I need to get everything. That was kind of gave me a benchmark to work towards, which was real good.
You mentioned diet. That's something I'm always very, very interested in. I was actually talking about it to someone today.
Yeah.
We're obviously here in this little like indoor riding spot that we've got, and because we've been riding so much, I've been like, right, try to get on the regime, like myself, Danny, and whoever else is here. Sick. Do you like hit it pretty hard with the diet, or is it a bit up and down? That's what we're at. That's where we're at, basically.
In honesty, probably a bit up and down. Yeah. There's good weeks and bad weeks, and I think it's hard because it's like you eat real good, and then suddenly you do 2-3 hour rides in a row, and it's like, okay, I just need to eat whatever I can eat now.
Yeah.
And suddenly it like drops a bit, but it's hard. I like it, as long as you can make good, healthy food, then it's and having the time's nice. It's not actually like I've got my 30-minute lunch break and I've got to try and make something or eat something. Actually, it's like I can take the time to focus on that, and it does help, I think. And
I definitely noticed it the other day, because when I say we've been eating healthy, it's been like literally like a week or something. We've been delighted with ourselves. Like, I haven't drunk alcohol in like a week. And they're like, oh yeah, well done. It's amazing how quickly it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Maybe yourself, you're like a fair bit younger than we are. And I definitely noticed, even in the course of like a week, like eating super healthy and then riding, just like recovery, like I suddenly then had a day where I had to drive to Glasgow and back again. Yeah. And like you said, like when you don't have the time, you're not at home. The diet just goes out the window. You suddenly had like having MacDonald's, and the next day I was riding and I was dying. And I was like, it was good for me to see it like so like clearly next to each other. I was like, a few days ago, there's obviously other factors in there. Sometimes you're just feeling good, whatever. But
no, I think I'm a bit the same, that you almost take it for granted. You're like, actually the feeling good just becomes how you normally feel.
Yeah, for sure.
And eat bad, then you feel awful. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe the diet was doing more things good than I realized. But because you've done it you eat good for a month, then you have 3 McDonald's in a row, and suddenly you're like, oh, this is why I don't do this. Yeah, this makes sense now.
Yeah, you're like wondering why you're not riding when you're like, I'm literally like 60% Big Mac.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is that something your trainer Chris works with you with nutrition, or is that something separate?
Yeah, no, he's done a lot for me with that, and sort of every now and then I'll send him pictures of what I'm eating for a day, and sort of any questions in terms of like mid-ride nutrition, he's always like super dialed with, because he does it all himself, and he pretty much does all our sessions that he gives us, he'll have done once or twice before himself at least. So he's pretty much training full time whilst programming our stuff. So he's always got ideas for snacks and food, and that's definitely beneficial to have someone who's not necessarily like checking up on you every day to check you're eating your salads, but to be like, Chris, I keep bonking on my 3-hour endurance ride. What should I be eating? And he'll like send over a bunch of recipes and snacks and stuff, and it's cool to have that.
Just a bit of accountability, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
It goes a long way. You've obviously been pretty active in EWS for the last few years, at least. On a rough scale, like how do you go about like prioritizing between EWS and downhill World Cups, or just downhill as a whole?
So it was a bit harder this year because I was sort of under 21 still. It was my last year, so I wanted to kind of have a good effort at the series. But for me, downhill was still a priority. And that was kind of what the team said was, you can race enduro if you want. We're in full support of it, but we're a downhill team, so we do hope you'd prioritize that. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm here for, and I get that. So downhill was definitely the priority, and there was a couple of clashes this year where I ended up racing downhill and missing a few EWS, but that's what I enjoy more. I think I love enduro, and it's fun to race, and it's cool to be a part of all that. But downhill still definitely like tops it for sure.
Did you miss at least 2 races then this year? Because obviously, I'm sure we'll get to you. Ended up taking the over. Is it under 21s or under 23s?
Under 21s.
Under 21s EWS and Peebles, which was cool to see. I was there. So basically, you managed to win that without racing every single round.
So what the EWS did a few years ago when they kind of started the category, because they were going like all over the world at that point because there was no restrictions. There was like Australia, America, Canada, Europe, everywhere. They made it so it's for under 21s. It's just your best 5 results. So that's what let me win it, was the fact I did exactly 5 races. So I missed. I think I missed 2 events. One was a double, and one was 3 races. So that's why it came down to the last race, going into that sort of Tweed Valley race, knowing I could win it, but I had to really pull a good one.
Yeah, okay, got it. So it definitely, that helps for sure, but it still definitely makes it harder. So whereas some other people were able to basically race 7 and pick their best 5. So did you come into that final round basically knowing that you just needed to win, essentially? Or did you have to have was there other things needed to happen behind you, if you know what I mean?
No, so I was actually really lucky in the way all the results had played out, that kind of me, and then so the first 4 rounds I went 1-1, 2-2, and then another guy, Luke Meyer-Smith, he went 2-2, 1-1.
Okay.
So we'd been real close. And then the sort of 3 that we'd both missed, because we were both doing the downhill stuff, had sort of been won by different people, so there wasn't like a clear other person. Then
okay, got you.
There's a French kid, Chichi, who ended up in there as well by the end, and I was lucky in that I went into the last round knowing that if I won the race, I'd win the series. I didn't have to say, like, sometimes it comes to it and it's like, oh, well, if he finishes worse than 7th and I finish better than 2nd, it was like, no, it's just straight up, you win it, you win everything. You don't, then it gets a bit more confusing, and
yeah, for sure.
But I probably wouldn't have won it, so that was how it came down, which was nice. I'd rather it was all on me than have to hope for someone else to have bad luck.
It's cool to see, like, Scottish guy winning it on Scottish soil. Looked pretty cool from where I was standing. Definitely, like we were saying earlier, the party went down on Peebles, which resulted in me tearing a ligament in my knee. So. Yeah.
No, it was good.
Apart from that, it was a good crack. How does a preparation for EWS, an EWS round, for example, compare to preparation for a World Cup round?
Just in terms of the enduro stuff, there's more. This year, none of the races were super like long. There wasn't too many like big 70k days, so not as much long endurance stuff, but still 2 or 3 sort of long, steady rides a week, and then trying to get some fast stuff on the enduro bike and a bit of uplift on it as well, so that you're getting sort of the top end speed. Whereas downhill would be more, few shorter enduro rides, and then as much downhill bike time as you can fit, logistically, really. So they kind of balance together and fit quite nicely, but you've certainly it's always good to sort of tune up on one a couple of weeks before each event, so that you're 100% coming into it.
Do you feel you're able to kind of like ride EWS rounds with like a bit more, or EWS stages with like a little bit more freedom, where you kind of know that a crash on a certain corner or a route or whatever isn't necessarily going to completely screw you for the series or even that weekend?
Yeah, no, that definitely changes how you ride, and it's kind of that there's a bit more thrill going on sometimes, because you know you can kind of push the limit, but also you don't really get enough practice to know where you're going.
Yeah.
You get the one practice run, and then you'll watch your GoPro as many times as you can that night, and then the next day you race it. So it's kind of that flat out blind racing. Probably keeps the speed down a little bit compared to the downhill stuff.
Okay.
But you certainly get loose, and trying to find the balance is, I guess, the key to the results for enduro.
Yeah, so like in some aspects you're basically able to push it harder because you don't need to worry about an off as much, but you don't know that track inside out like you do a World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. It probably feels like you're getting looser and you're going faster, and you take your foot off more often, and you take panic lines, or you just like ride up the bank trying to set up for a turn you'd forgotten about and stuff like that. So it's probably a bit more exciting than the downhill sometimes, because you're not just like locked in and fully focused, because there's so much going on in enduro.
Yeah.
But you're definitely not as intense, which is kind of why I like the downhill more, I think. I like knowing where I'm going.
Yeah. What would be like a typical overall EWS round time if you added up all your stages?
They try and keep it about 30 to 40 minutes at the moment. So
it's pretty mad when you think, like, even if you race like half as many EWS as World Cups, like an actual race experience and race time, it's just hard to get that time in.
Well, that's
pushing it full whack, like in the downhill as opposed to EWS.
Yeah, and that was one of the big reasons why I think it complements the downhill so much, is the fact that I'm spending my weekends riding my bike at 99%, as opposed to going for a trail ride instead. It's like the weekend off from racing World Cups, you just go and ride flat out for a weekend, and that intensity you can't really get anywhere else when there's no tape, and you certainly don't push as hard. It's hard to push in your training. Like if you had a set of hill climb sprints, you'd never push yourself quite as hard as you would if you're an EWS and there was just a hill that you had to sprint up in mid stage. So I think for the training side of things, it's real beneficial as well.
Yeah, it's funny, like no matter how hard you try, there's just that final few percentiles that you just can't replicate the adrenaline sort of motivation as you do. When you're actually racing. Not that I actually ever race or know what I'm talking about.
Have you ever raced?
Nah, I used to compete with like trials.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a total different beast. It's it's not like out and out pace. But again, it's still similar. Like you're still going to always try harder.
Yeah.
We obviously do shows and stuff, which is kind of a hard. Like again, it's a
similar pressure, but different.
It's similar, but at the same time, it's not. You're not like trying to get something over on like somebody else. No. It's very much a case of like you're just doing something. Even though it's like a lot of people can sometimes be there, it's still a fairly controlled environment. And you're kind of being it, but it's hard to sort of recreate that buzz, because at the end of the day, like there's people watching you and it's a cool atmosphere. It's like it's going to be. Going to get you going more than if you're just like riding by yourself in the cold and north of Scotland. In terms of like north of Scotland, like I mentioned there, you're from Nitty Bridge, which isn't too far from where I'm from Inverness. There's obviously a pretty strong scene here. How much would you attribute your success on the racetrack to where you've sort of grown up and where you've learnt to ride bikes?
There's definitely a lot of value in sort of the scene up here, and having the tracks and the it's kind of weird that we're in one little spot, but there's so much variety in the riding that you could go and ride foot deep loam tracks over by the coast, or you could go ride dirt jumps in the woods, or big bike jumps, or fast stuff. And I think having that variety within such a small area has been super beneficial, and just having the sort of people to look up to really race with, that like having Greg and Kenter and those boys, seeing them do well and sort of getting closer and closer to keeping up with them has been real key to, I think, growing up and trying to go as fast as I can.
It's probably underestimated how important it is for someone who's younger to look at someone who's not necessarily like similar to them, but similar to them in circumstances and stuff like that, similar to where you've grown up, and actually see that it is possible to make it into the World Cup circuit, or to get results in the World Cup circuit.
Oh, I think it's really beneficial for us as well, and to see it'd be so easy to be on Instagram and see all the guys in France that ride in the dust from October to March and then win the World Cups, and it's like, oh, if they're doing that, we've got no chance. But to have those boys that have kind of done it their way and to be able to sort of follow in their footsteps has been real good, and it definitely keeps you motivated knowing that you're not living in the worst place ever. And it, even if it feels like it sometimes, because all the tracks are covered in snow, it's like Greg's grown up doing this and he's managed, so it's doable if you keep at it, for sure.
Do you think that's something that helped you guys back in 2020 a little bit, with not just the conditions of the track, but actually like the temperature? Because I think you ended up racing in, what was it, October?
Yeah, so it was October.
It's a bit more chilly than you'd expect.
I think it did a bit. It seems like the temperature doesn't matter too much at the races. When it goes up, everyone seems to just like get on with it, and you dunk yourself in an ice bath before you go ride or whatever you need to do. But certainly when it gets cold, it definitely helps us boys. Although it seems that the stuff over in Europe, it's not quite like riding. Everyone says, oh, you're from Britain and you'll be good in the wet. And it's like the riding here in the wet is so grippy compared to some stuff over there. That actually it's like a whole different beast when it rains in France. You're sliding wherever you are.
Yeah, but here it's just like proper wet.
Yeah,
like not dust mixed with wetness.
Yeah, exactly. So it is different, but it definitely helps being used to the climate and knowing how to handle yourself on a wet day, of keeping your goggles dry and keeping your kit dry and being able to actually clean your bike properly. It definitely helps. Yeah,
it's interesting you say that about the keeping your goggles dry and stuff like that. I think that was one of the things that Reece said when I had him on the pod just after he won World Champs. And obviously the wet track was a factor, but a big part of it was just like knowing like practically what to do, as well as like psychologically how to deal with like stopping your goggles from steaming up. Like you got wet gloves, you've got wet kit, or like being prepared for that sort of stuff. And like just those little things obviously just like all feed into potential like marginal gains, I suppose.
I think you could definitely see it. Like it rained for that Tweed Valley race, or no, it rained for the practice of it, and seeing boys at the top that were just sat there shivering, and I was there in like full waterproof thermals, and I was just like, I knew what to expect, and I was right. And these boys are just in a race jersey trying to make it work, and it's certainly having that sort of practical experience of the harsh conditions definitely pays off. Yeah,
Scottish Borders for you is like, it's the tropics, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Like closer to the equator from where you actually live.
I know. Although the Inverness microclimate seems to come through it most of the time compared to Aviemore way.
Yeah, it's interesting when you like talk about, again, like people making it into the World Cup from places you'd maybe not expect. And one thing when I was actually in France, which I was really interested by, was I just assumed that all the top French riders were like born in Morzine and all the ski resorts, but it's actually like not really the case. And so many of them are from like the south coast, where they've obviously got mountain biking, but they've not got like uplift up like the highest mountains.
There's no chairlifts and stuff.
And then it's kind of similar to the UK. Like UK has such a strong scene, it's obviously like a bit of uplift, and we've obviously got more bike parks, more and more bike parks now. Do you think it's almost a blessing in that when you don't have access to that, and you almost then change your approach and just like session the same corner over and over again, or I don't know, just get a certain stretch of track like really dialed, as opposed to just like going up for like 10 minutes in the uplift and having like a 30-minute descent or something?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely beneficial and it always has been why the UK's done so well, considering it doesn't really. I look at places to go train in the UK now, and there's only like 3 or 4 tracks that would be anything like a World Cup track. But the fact that you can go to anywhere and do a 1.5 minute track flat out, that having that experience at that intensity, actually it's just then a case of dialing in your fitness, and you can you can race at that
Just
speed
do it
for
twice.
3 minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's that intensity and the sort of scene of just pushing up and riding turns and
Yeah.
sort of developing those real basic bike skills real well is definitely key, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And you think of even more extreme case would probably be like Brendan Fairclough, who like lives down south, and like I don't know what their max like descent time would be.
Yeah.
It's like nothing.
Yeah, like a minute or something. It's for a pretty flat track, but they seem to make it work for them, and it's just a case of doing what you can, I think, and that's always been the way around here.
Definitely a sort of insightful one with how it all works, and sometimes it's not what you would expect. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Like you'd have thought just like kids that grew up in a ski resort would just be so hard to touch.
Yeah,
But
no, actually, and having spent some time out in France, down in the south, there's a real strong scene out there, and there's a lot of people. Like, you could go to a track to go test on, and there'd be 2 other World Cup riders there that day, pretty much any day. And some of the tracks there, so it's, and having they definitely make the most of their terrain down there, and there's a good scene that's kind of, everyone's supportive of it, so it's, you can see what could be done down there for sure.
So have you been, did you say you've just been out there just now?
I was out in start of December. We went out and did some stuff with the team out there. Valley's mechanic lives in the south of France, so we went to his house and tested some stuff and rode together, and it was cool out there.
Have you got any more trips in the immediate future in terms of testing and training?
Plan is to go out to Portugal in end of February, so that'll be kind of the next big trip away, and then the World Cup starts pretty early this year. So
what's the first round?
Lourdes in France.
Ah, okay.
So it's sort of down in the southwest. Yeah, southwest of France, and that's real early, like last weekend of March. So
and then Fort William, which has been off for what, be 3 years before it actually comes back. Like is that in June, is it, or May?
End of May, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So is that going to be second round?
That'll be round 2. So there's a bit of a break between the first 2.
How does the sound of going to Fort William make you feel? So it'll be your first time as an elite.
Yeah.
Fort William.
No, I think I'm looking forward to it. I think as much as it's cool to have racing in Scotland and the fans there are insane, it was probably nice to have a little bit of time off from it. The track it's such a harsh environment up there. It's so hard for them to change the track that it quite often ends up being the same track year to year. So it was nice to have a break and refresh and be like, right, I'm actually excited to race Fort William and I'm really looking forward to it, as opposed to sort of, oh, we're going to back to Fort William. We'll be on the same line as last year. Let's go scare ourselves for a weekend. So
that's so good.
And so I'm really looking forward to getting back there.
Yeah, it's funny that sometimes it like takes a external force to basically make you take a break from something. It could be anything, and it's actually like once you actually take it, you're like, oh, that's actually been pretty dialed. We definitely had it with shows this year, where we like didn't do any shows for the whole 2020, and at the time you're like, oh fuck, I like really want to do shows, but then like when you come back, you're like, it definitely feels better. And you're like, oh, actually maybe a break was a good thing.
Yeah, no, it was like that so they hadn't really had fans at the races, and then the J World Cup came around last year, and it was just insane. It was like 25,000 people there, and it was just. It made you appreciate it again. You were like, oh yeah, this is what racing really is. Having this many people getting this excited about racing, it was so cool to have.
Yeah, I forget that back in 2020 was that a bit of a weird one to deal with in terms of lack of crowds.
Yeah, they still managed to get some spectators in, so it wasn't like it didn't feel dead. And the sort of event village, actually, once you were in, it was just like a normal World Cup pits area, really. So that they managed to keep it kind of as normal as they could, but it still would have been nice to have the fans, because it definitely adds to the atmosphere and it keeps you excited to be racing.
No, I definitely can imagine it being a bit weird on, but I suppose like you say, you just get used to whatever is happening fairly quick, and then it doesn't take it till when they come back again to actually realise how class it is.
Exactly.
So in terms of 2022, have you got any like sort of standout goals or ambitions in terms of results for both World Cup and EWS, or is that a case of just again taking it as it comes and seeing where you fall?
Kind of just taking it as it comes, and sort of I've got a few little goals in my head that kind of where I think I should be at in terms of like who I'm around time wise, but just trying to get to the point where I can finish every race run and be like, yeah, that was 100% there, that I had nothing left to give, and then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And if I'm not happy, then figuring out what I need to do next. But I think getting to the point of kind of got to it at the end of last year where I sort of figured out in my head how much I needed to push mentally and what the limit was that I needed to be on to be getting where I want to go, and trying to be there every race this year would be kind of the main goal.
Are you again doing a mix of World Cup, downhill and EWS?
So I think the plan for this year is going to be the full downhill series, some EWS, and then I think I might do some e-bike races as well potentially.
Oh, really?
Which would be cool. Yeah.
Which e-bike races are you thinking?
I'm not sure yet. We still need to sort of sit down and have a proper look at the calendar, because a lot of them are the same time as the EWS. So it's kind of like you pick one or the other, and I'm not sure I'd want to do both on the same weekend.
I was going to say, are you allowed to do EWS and EWS on the same weekend?
I think
Is it different.
I think you
stages?
are based on I think sometimes there'll be a couple of stages that cross over, and they just assume that if you've done both, you'll be ruined.
Oh, so you actually you can't use it as like, well, you could use it as...
it's more detrimental than beneficial, I think.
Okay, cool. So when you say e-bike racing, you're thinking like EWS?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Bit of a mouthful, yeah.
Yeah, I nearly entered the Tweed Valley EWS, but because we were doing shows and stuff, we were like set up, but I was definitely tempted and it looked pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
I quite like the idea of doing some of the climb stuff, because as a trials rider, I like the climbing stuff, but definitely get absolutely roasted by you boys on the descent. But that'll be interesting to see. So you just, in terms of like overall series, you're not going to get like too wrapped up with EWS?
No. I know that I couldn't, if I do the full World Cup, I can't make it to all the EWS. So it's at that point, it's like, actually they're good races to do, and they're fun, and they're kind of training races. So if I'm on an e-bike or an enduro bike, it doesn't make too much difference, and it'd be nice to have a bit of variety.
Are you actually able to do the whole thing in like boost, or is it like an eco? Because is it different? You can change batteries, right?
So I think they have like 3 loops, and each loop, in theory, they've planned it, so it's basically you do the whole loop on boost, and that's one battery, and then you do another loop, and that's one battery. So which makes it pretty intense, and I think it's like 1,000 meters climbing per loop. So it's a big day in the end. I think a lot of people sort of see it as, it's an EWS enduro race, but I don't have to pedal as hard. But actually, they've just made them huge, big days with like 14 stages now. So it's
and I guess as soon as you put yourself up against other people, it's all just becomes relative, doesn't it? So just like,
exactly.
I think someone said that, I don't know if it was Warner or someone said that the EWS at Tweed Valley was like the hardest day on a bike he's ever done.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was I
can imagine,
before that. It sounds gnarly.
No, definitely big days, and that if you I struggled to learn the 6 stages that we have to do for a normal race. So the thought of doing 10, 14 stages is pretty mad, but I think it'd be fun, and it's just a different challenge, and it's cool to try the new stuff.
And I guess good for sponsors as well, because e-bikes are a big focus for so many brands.
Yeah, exactly.
Only thing I'd be worried about if I entered EWS is I don't know if my bike could pass the scrutiny, and maybe some dodgy software on that motor.
Running it in turbo mode.
Yeah, it's like turbo mode.
Because you've been riding quite a lot of e-bikes, have you?
Yeah, man, we've been absolutely loving it. Like for a whole lockdown, I didn't even have a running mountain bike, because like as soon as something breaks in the e-bike, it's just like immediately just get wheels are getting rubbed off. My actual bike, or my my mountain bike. Before you know it, like it's the only thing you have. Obviously, just like so mostly it's trials bike and e-bike. But definitely need to do more mountain bike stuff. It's actually funny, the day that I met you up the Mast, on local trails, that's one of the most viewed videos I had on my Instagram last year. There's like a video, I don't know if you remember it, of like,
I remember.
I think it was Danny and Rory pushing you up the hill because you were on your mountain bike and we were on e-bikes.
And
I think I had like, I can't remember, something insane, like way more than I'd usually get, like 300,000 views or something.
No way.
Yeah,
that's funny.
So the video that's had the most views, or nearly the most views from last year, is a video that I'm not even in. So.
We'll need to. So I'd been wanting an e-bike for ages, and I've been sort of asking the team, and they were like, well, yeah, we'll get you one. But with COVID and everything, it was so hard to get a bike sent to me, and the way they do it, you can't like get frame only, so they have to wait until they've got all the parts and whatever. So I ended up just like, I sold my downhill bike, bought an e-bike, put all my own parts on it and just run that now. And it's, the team one will turn up, but it's like, I was so impatient, and I'm so glad I did, because it's just been so much fun, just like razzing around in the woods. And like I went for a ride before we did this podcast, and I did like 6 laps of the mast in an hour.
Oh, really?
It was just like,
that's insane.
Just I actually struggled to get warmed up enough to like drop in after because of a 20-minute, your usual 20-minute climb is like 7 minutes, and then you're like at the top, and it's like I'm still cold, and then just drop it in. But that's so much fun.
That's pretty funny that you say that, because I think a lot of people out there think that the pro riders are getting like e-bikes forced on them by the brand. And like that's the case in hand, where it's like literally the opposite. Like you're trying your hardest to get one. And obviously with COVID and stuff. And again, I think people expect like pro riders to be able to get any bike they want, but that's how bad the supply chains happen. Like they can't even get the pros their bikes and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, they've done real good at getting us all the stuff we need to actually race. So I was never short of a downhill bike or an enduro bike, but it was just that extra bike that I was like, is there one available? Is there? Can we get one? I was like, we don't know. Having
to pretend that you want to race EWS next year just so you can get a bike.
Exactly. No, and it was good, and it's the sort of thing. It's worth the investment. I think at this point, everyone, all the downhills pretty much now are on them, and it's so beneficial, because you can either ride more or you can do the same ride and feel fresher afterwards. So it's definitely good for training.
Yeah, that Trek e-bike, I was riding with Cade down in Wales. Yeah. It looks like well, probably because Cade was on it as well, but definitely looked like it goes pretty good.
Yeah. It is so good. That's what I've got as well. And
is it essentially just the same geo as what you ride your enduro bike?
Not quite, but not far off. Similar kind of setup, and I've pretty much got all the same parts on it, and it feels pretty comfy. And those bikes are so like planted to the ground that the setup almost is less important. You kind of just like plug anything into it, and it'll ride good, and you don't have to worry too much, which is really nice.
Yeah, I'm definitely converted. I think that's one of the feedbacks I get on this podcast, is like from people who aren't into bikes, like, oh yeah, I find it like pretty interesting still, but like as soon as you guys talk about e-bikes, I just get like, I just want to switch off.
Yeah.
We're like so bad. I'm not as bad, but Danny is particularly bad for just preaching to everyone, even people who have already got them. Oh, I did this, you need to get anyway. Like, yeah, I've already got one, it's fine. But for a training tool, they're class.
No, exactly.
But yeah, it's definitely hard to get back on the regular bike after you get used to the e-bike. I did it one day and literally thought like I had cement in my tires. Like getting off, checking like my brakes weren't rubbing and stuff like that. Like, nah, they're fine. You just
my legs.
You just have to get used to going slower. Like,
oh, I know. It's like a whole different way of pedaling as well. You just like on an e-bike, you just like keep the cadence super high and just spin your legs out. You try and do that on a normal bike, and you're like, I need like 4 more gears here.
Putting your seat up and stuff like that, and your regular bike's just like every little extra help you can get. The best was like, don't even, I'll just leave my seat down, just like letting my knees out and stuff. But maybe I need to put it in eco or something. Yeah. But we should get it for a ride for sure.
No, for sure.
I saw how fast you go up on your mountain bike though, so maybe I'll just keep riding the e-bike. But aye, that was good. I've had you on a while, so
thanks.
Let you get back to your training. Go make some healthy foods. Thanks for coming on. We actually managed. Don't want to like tempt fate. You got it. I think everything's still recording.
Perfect.
I'll probably like look back at it later and be like, oh, I need to get you to come back in tomorrow, and we'll like redo it. But
no stress, it was good.
Nah, it's good. Cheers for coming on, and all the best for 2022. I'll be watching you, willing you on, and hopefully hope you have a better.
Likewise, thank you.
Cheers,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.